Welcome to our deep dive today. We're going to be looking at Psalm 31.
Oh, Psalm 31.
It's powerful stuff.
Yeah, it really is. It's attributed to King David.
Yeah.
And it's quite a ride. It's like an emotional roller coaster. We're going to see fear, we're going to see despair, but also just incredible trust and ultimately this triumphant affirmation of faith.
It really is. I mean, right out of the gate, David is crying out to God.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's using these words like shelter, stronghold, refuge. And he even says, "In you, O Lord, I have taken shelter. Never let me be humiliated. Vindicate me by rescuing me."
Wow.
It feels desperate.
It does. And especially that plea for vindication, I think it adds another layer to it.
Yeah.
Think about that, like someone crying out for justice today.
Right.
They want their name to be cleared.
Exactly.
David felt wrongly accused, hunted, trapped, and knowing that he was constantly facing enemies and betrayal makes these opening verses even more poignant.
Yeah. And it's not just physical safety he's looking for, right? He's worried about being humiliated, his reputation being tarnished. There's a deep sense of vulnerability here.
There is.
Yeah.
And that vulnerability makes the image of God as a stronghold even more powerful, I think.
Yeah.
It's not just a fortress against physical attack, but it's also a place of emotional and spiritual refuge.
Oh, I like that.
David is seeking a place where he can be truly himself.
Yeah.
Without fear of judgment or condemnation.
It makes you think about what we turn to for that kind of refuge in our own lives.
Right.
What are our strongholds, those places, those people, those beliefs that give us that sense of safety and security?
That's a great question to consider.
Yeah.
As we go deeper into this psalm. Because as we move into verses 9 through 13, things get even more intense and even more personal.
Okay, yeah. So brace yourself, because here's where it takes this dark turn.
Mm-hmm.
David starts describing not just the external threats, but also this deep internal pain. His strength is failing. He talks about feeling publicly shamed, forgotten, worthless. There's this one line that just really hits me. "I am forgotten, like a dead man no one thinks about. I am regarded as worthless, like a broken jar."
Those are powerful images.
Aren't they?
Yeah. And while most of us haven't been a king on the run,
Right.
we haven't faced those exact circumstances that David did, but those feelings of despair and loneliness, feeling like we've lost our value, those are things that I think a lot of us, unfortunately, can relate to.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's almost uncomfortable how relatable it is.
Yeah.
It's like he's putting words to some of the darkest, most hidden emotions that we might experience. And I wonder, is he trying to shock us with this intensity? Or is it more about him being just brutally honest with God and with himself?
That's what makes these early verses so important, I think. We often think of David as this warrior king.
Right.
But here we see this totally different side of him.
Yeah.
He's stripped bare, exposing his deepest fears and insecurities. And it's a reminder that even the most powerful figures struggle with self-doubt and despair.
Yeah, and the sense of despair is just amplified by the imagery that he uses.
Right.
Forgotten like a dead man. It speaks to this feeling of isolation, like being completely cut off from the world.
Right.
And then a broken jar.
Right. Yeah.
This sense of being damaged, unusable beyond repair.
It's heavy stuff.
Heavy stuff.
Yeah, and I think it's important for us to kind of sit with these emotions for a bit, to really feel the weight of David's despair. Because it's in the midst of this darkness that something truly remarkable happens.
Yeah, you're right. Just when you think it can't get any more depressing.
Yeah.
Bam! There's this shift in verse 14. "But I trust in you, O Lord. I declare you are my God."
Yeah.
It's like this sudden burst of light in the darkness.
Exactly. It's like a lifeline that he's throwing out.
Yeah.
Both to God and to himself.
Yeah.
And in the face of all this despair, David makes this conscious choice to cling to his faith.
Yeah.
It's not just passive acceptance. It's an active declaration of trust.
This is where it gets really powerful, right?
Yeah.
He's acknowledging the reality of his suffering.
Right.
He doesn't sugarcoat it, but he's refusing to let it define him.
Totally. Yeah.
It's like he's choosing hope even when everything feels hopeless.
Yeah. And it's not just blind faith either.
Right.
Remember, the next section of Psalm 31, David is going to reflect on God's past faithfulness.
Yeah.
Recounting those times when he was rescued and protected. He'll even admit to moments of doubt.
Yeah.
Which honestly makes him all the more relatable.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
So it's like he's reminding himself and us that even when we can't see it, even when we doubt, that connection with a higher power, that sense of being cared for is still there.
It is. It is.
He literally says, "I jumped to conclusions and said, I am cut off from your presence, but you heard my plea for mercy when I cried out to you for help.
It's powerful stuff.
Pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah, and it points to something crucial here. I think the power of perspective.
When we're in the midst of a struggle, it's so easy to just get caught up in the negative,
Yeah.
to focus on what's going wrong. But if we can take a step back
Yeah.
and remember those times when we've overcome challenges in the past, when we've felt that support, it can give us this renewed sense of hope and resilience.
Yeah. So it's like David is saying, hey, I've been through tough times before, and I made it through.
Yeah.
God was there for me then, and I can trust that he'll be there for me again. I don't know about you, but that's pretty encouraging to me.
Me too. Absolutely.
It's a reminder that our current struggles don't have to define us.
Exactly. And it's not about ignoring the pain or pretending everything is fine, but about holding on to that thread of hope, that belief that there's something more even when we can't see it.
Yeah, and that, I think, is what makes Psalm 31 so relevant for us today, even centuries later.
Absolutely, because we all face those moments of darkness, those times when we feel overwhelmed and lost.
Oh.
And Psalm 31 offers us a roadmap, a way to navigate those difficult emotions and emerge on the other side with a renewed sense of hope and resilience.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
A roadmap. That's a great way to put it. So we've got David in this desperate situation, but he's clinging to hope. He's reminding us that even when we can't see it, that connection to something greater is still there. What are we going to explore next? What happens next in Psalm 31?
Well, we're going to see how David's trust isn't just this passive thing, but it leads him to action. We're going to unpack what that means for us today,
Yeah.
how we can cultivate that same kind of radical trust in our own lives.
All right. I'm ready. Let's dive in.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Psalm 31. When we left off, David was in a pretty dark place, grappling with some intense feelings of despair and isolation.
Oh, yeah.
But he made that powerful declaration of trust in God right in the middle of all that pain.
It always gets me. That sudden shift. It's like he's saying, okay, things are really bad right now, but I'm not giving up on hope. It's almost defiant.
Absolutely. And it's not just blind faith either.
Right.
Remember what we talked about earlier in the next part of Psalm 31?
Mm.
David reflects on God's past faithfulness, recounting times when he was rescued and protected.
Mm-hmm.
He'll even admit to moments of doubt, which I think makes him even more relatable.
Right. Like
Yeah.
he's reminding himself and us that even when we can't see it, even when we doubt that connection with a higher power, that sense of being cared for is still there.
Yeah.
He literally says, I jumped to conclusions and said, I am cut off from your presence, but you heard my plea for mercy when I cried out to you for help. Pretty powerful stuff.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
And it points to something crucial here, I think. The power of perspective.
Okay.
When we're in the midst of a struggle, it's so easy to just get caught up in the negative,
Oh, yeah.
to focus on what's going wrong. But if we can just, take a step back and remember those times when we've overcome challenges in the past, when we've felt that support, it can give us this renewed sense of hope and resilience.
So it's like he's saying, hey, I've been through tough times before and I made it through.
Right.
God was there for me then, and I can trust that he'll be there for me again.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, that's pretty encouraging to me.
Me too. Absolutely.
It's a reminder that our current struggles don't have to define us.
Exactly. And it's not about ignoring the pain or pretending everything is fine, but about holding on to that thread of hope, that belief that there's something more, even when we can't see it.
It reminds me of that idea of radical trust that we mentioned earlier. Like, it's not just about believing in something. It's about acting on that belief even when it's hard.
Yes, you hit the nail on the head. David is showing us what radical trust looks like in action.
Right.
He's surrounded by enemies. He's feeling abandoned and forgotten. Yet, he chooses to declare his trust in God. He's literally putting his faith into action. And that's a powerful example for all of us.
And it's not just about personal faith either, right? I mean, David was a king, a leader responsible for an entire nation.
Mm-hmm.
So this idea of radical trust also applies to how we lead, how we face challenges, how we inspire others to persevere even when things get tough.
You're absolutely right. Think about it. David isn't just seeking comfort for himself. He's also praying for the well-being of his people.
Mm-hmm.
He's asking for guidance and strength to lead them through difficult times. It's a reminder that leadership isn't about avoiding challenges or pretending everything is fine, but about facing those challenges head on with courage and conviction.
Okay, so we've got radical trust. the power of perspective. There's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah.
But there's one more thing that really stands out to me in this psalm.
Okay.
It's how incredibly honest and vulnerable David is about his struggles.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't try to hide his fear or doubt. He lays it all out there before God.
I love that you brought that up. That's one of the things that makes this psalm so relatable and so powerful. You know, it's not this sugar-coated version of faith. It's a raw and honest portrayal of what it means to grapple with doubt and despair while still clinging to hope.
It's like he's giving us permission to not be okay to acknowledge our own struggles without feeling ashamed or weak.
Exactly. And that's a really important message for us today.
Yeah.
Especially in a culture that often pressures us to project an image of perfection. Psalm 31 reminds us that it's okay to not have all the answers. It's okay to struggle. It's okay to ask for help.
And it's in those moments of vulnerability, of admitting that we don't have it all together, that we often find the greatest strength and connection.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
It's in acknowledging our limitations, our need for support, that we open ourselves up to receiving the help and guidance we need. David's vulnerability in Psalm 31 isn't a sign of weakness. It's a testament to his faith and his willingness to rely on a power greater than himself.
So it's not about pretending we're perfect, but about embracing our imperfections and finding strength in our vulnerability. And honestly, I think that's a message that resonates with all of us, regardless of our background or beliefs.
Absolutely. It's a timeless message of human resilience and the enduring power of faith, beautifully expressed in a way that continues to move and inspire us today.
Okay, so we've covered radical trust, the power of perspective, and the beauty of vulnerability. But there's one more theme I want to touch on before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, and it's the idea of justice.
Ah, yes.
You know,
Remember, David wasn't just a poet or a spiritual seeker. He was also a king, a leader responsible for upholding justice in his kingdom.
exactly. So when he cries out to God for vindication, for protection from his enemies, it's not just about personal safety. It's also about ensuring that justice prevails.
It definitely adds another layer to the psalm.
Right.
It raises questions about how our personal faith connects with our responsibility to make the world a better place. How are we as individuals called to work for justice in our own spheres of influence?
It's like a reminder that faith isn't just about personal comfort or seeking blessings for ourselves, but it's also about actively working to create a more just and equitable world for everyone.
And that's a powerful message for us today, especially in a world where injustice and inequality are still so prevalent.
Yeah.
It's a challenge to not just passively accept things as they are, but to actively work for change.
Yeah.
To stand up for what we believe in, even when it's difficult.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Radical trust, the power of perspective, the beauty of vulnerability, and the call to justice.
We have.
That's a lot to unpack from one song. But it's amazing how relevant these themes still are today, isn't it?
It really is. And I think we've only just scratched the surface.
Yeah.
But hopefully this deep dive has given you a new appreciation for just how powerful and profound Psalm 31 truly is.
Yeah. Absolutely. And maybe it's even inspired you to go back and read it again to see what other gems of wisdom you can discover in this ancient text. But for now, we're going to move on to the final part of our deep dive, where we'll wrap up our exploration of Psalm 31 with some final thoughts and reflections. Welcome back.
It's hard to believe that we've spent this whole deep dive exploring just one psalm.
I know.
And we've only just scratched the surface.
Yeah, it speaks to the depth and complexity of these ancient texts, doesn't it?
It really does. They contain layers upon layers of meaning, just waiting to be uncovered.
Yeah, we've gone from David's raw cries for help through his moments of deep despair all the way to this powerful affirmation of trust in God and a call to action for all of us.
Right. And along the way, we've uncovered themes of radical trust, the power of perspective, the beauty of vulnerability, and the call to justice.
Yeah.
These aren't just abstract concepts either. They offer real guidance for how we live our lives even today.
You know, one of the things that strikes me is how Psalm 31 doesn't shy away from the full spectrum of human experience.
Yeah.
There's joy and sorrow, fear and courage, doubt and faith all woven together. It's like David is giving us permission to be fully human with all the messy emotions that come with it.
I think that's why this song resonates so deeply with people across cultures and centuries.
Yeah.
You know, it acknowledges that life isn't always easy, that we all face challenges and struggles.
Even King David, this legendary figure, had moments where he felt lost and afraid. And yet he never lost sight of his faith, his belief that ultimately God was with him. That's a powerful message for anyone going through a tough time, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It's a reminder that we don't have to have it all figured out. It's okay to doubt, to question, to wrestle with our faith.
Yeah.
In fact, those struggles can lead us to a deeper, more authentic understanding of ourselves and our beliefs.
It's almost like those dark nights of the soul are a necessary part of the journey.
Mm-hmm.
It's through those moments of wrestling and seeking that we often find the greatest strength and clarity.
And that brings us back to, I think, the central message of Psalm 31. That unwavering belief in a God who is always present, always listening, always ready to offer comfort and guidance.
Even when we feel like we're cut off from that presence, like David describes, even when we doubt or question, that connection is never truly broken. It's a powerful reminder that we're not alone in our struggles.
Yeah.
There's a higher power who cares for us and wants to see us thrive.
It makes me think about that question we posed earlier about strongholds.
Oh, yeah.
Where do you find your strength and comfort in times of trouble? David found his in God. But, there are many different sources of strength and support in our lives. It could be family, friends, a community, even an inner resilience that you've cultivated within yourself.
That's a great point. And maybe it's not just one thing, but a combination of different things that create that sense of safety and support.
Right.
The important thing is to be aware of what those strongholds are and to nurture those connections.
Exactly. Because having those strongholds, those sources of unwavering strength can make all the difference in how we navigate the ups and downs of life.
Yeah, it can be the difference between succumbing to despair and rising to meet our challenges with courage and hope. And that, I think, is the ultimate message of Psalm 31. It's not about avoiding challenges or pretending everything is fine. It's about finding that inner strength, that unwavering trust that allows us to face whatever comes our way with resilience and hope.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Psalm 31, I hope you'll take this message to heart.
Yeah.
Remember that you're not alone in your struggles. Remember the power of perspective, of looking back on those times when you've overcome challenges in the past. And remember that you have within you the strength and resilience to face whatever the future holds.
Beautifully said. And until next time, keep exploring, keep seeking, and keep finding those strongholds that will empower you to live a life filled with purpose and meaning.